Okay, the collection on the first day is about sacrifice or punishment, but also imprisonment. All these things relate directly to the woman in Fear and Desire. She's the one tied to a tree. Though she is not blindfolded or even gagged, she is still blind to the danger, as she doesn't understand a single word being said by anyone.
You see boat, our boat.
Ball?
Yes, that's it. Boat. You see boat?
Don't tell me she doesn't even understand you.
The only thing she says is boat, a question, like she's just trying the word out for the first time. She is deaf to what they say. And though it's not quite the same, she could be said to have been killed by firing squad after all. Also, you could relate this to the first attack. The logs are the two men, as they do nothing but watch as the men invade their house. These men are dead wood. The rope is the third man, who's roped into being killed just by arriving. And all three men are blind to the attack, representing the cloth. So if the first day's collection is meant to represent necessary sacrifice, what are Sora, Riku, and Kairi sacrificing? Well, quite a lot actually. For one, though they're never specifically saying this, they're all running away from home to perhaps never return. Sacrificing their lives on the island, you also sacrifice your own group's mirror of Tidus, Waka, and Selphie. On the second day, okay, the things you collect today are 1 seagull egg, 3 mushrooms, 2 coconuts, 3 fish, and fill this with water. These are directly connected to Fear and Desire in this way. 1 seagull egg. The egg represents rebirth, and the seagull is the escape. Whatever happens, you have to sacrifice part of yourself to survive, and the only escape is through the sky. The 3 mushrooms. The people are killed in the room for stew, or mush, so they are killed in the mushroom. 3 dead in the mushroom. 2 coconuts are cannibals, which you might think is a stretch, but consider the coconut for a second. It's the only fruit with a shell so hard that you have to essentially murder the thing to get at the juicy insides. It also has a skin that looks particularly animal-like, along with hairs that look a lot like fur. It's the only fruit I know of with particularly mammalian characteristics. Anyway, there are 2 times cannibals are mentioned in the film.
What's the matter, Snookums? I heard that they're cannibals. So even if we get caught, you're pretty safe.
Both by Mac, who himself could be a cannibal, as he is the only one who eats the stew and says the natives are cannibals, but also cannibalizes himself as he offers himself up in self-sacrifice so that the others might live. This is a noble sacrifice, but it is in the same vein as killing others for food, as Mac also does. Sydney is also a self-cannibal. Much like Mac, he's symbolically eating himself because he thinks he has to. Mac can self-sacrifice so the other men can get away, but Sydney's own eating of oneself is done out of, well, a primal fear and desire that he seems to not fully understand. He is both the fish and the general eating the fish. He has become the Ouroboros, the snake which eats himself, meant to ancient alchemists to represent life's futility, but also its infinite nature. And much like David Bowman in 2001, Sydney goes into his own infinity. His world is forever changed. He has cannibalized his old self so that his new, crazed self can survive. Sydney eats himself almost by accident. Mac's self-cannibalization is completely on purpose. 3 fish. 3 people mention fish in the film, and each character says it at least twice. Also, these men could be said to be fish out of water, as they are completely lost in a strange environment, and only 3 of them survive. And finally, fill this up with water. Though she gives you a bottle, she just says fill something full of water. In this case, the scene when Sydney is feeding the woman water with his hands. This is a transference of his own energy to give it to her. He's giving of himself to allow another to live, but he does this selfishly, expecting something in return. Also, these materials that Sora gathers, each represents a different element. I mean, perhaps this is not food for your trip. I mean, it never gets eaten, so it's not anyway. But the egg is air, fish is water, mushrooms earth, and coconuts fire? Okay, you might think that last one is a bit of a stretch again, dumb coconuts. But you have to get them by hitting your wooden sword into a tree, literally rubbing 2 sticks together. One way said to make fire. Lastly, pure water, not from the ocean. You might say, oh, that's just water again. It's not water as the element. It's water that does not contain life or impurities. But all water contains the possibility of life, just as all life on Earth is made mostly out of water. It is instead the fifth element, which I've just granted you clearance to know, which is Aether, which is the life force that surrounds us and penetrates us. It binds the galaxy together. It's the soul of the very universe, you might say. It is the possibility of life, and what better way to represent it than a clear bottle of pure water? The essence of all life. Just as Sydney uses it to allow another to live, it's the truth of this world. Water is life. Anyway, the first 5 elements have been united and given to Kyrie, so she can bind these elements to summon the only way for her and the 2 people she cares the most for. And sacrificing your whole world to escape your prison seems worthy enough cause to do so. Just maybe in the process things go a little awry. For pretty much everyone, actually. But, as I've been saying, survival requires sacrifice. There's another part to mention here, and that's dealing with the first choice in Sora's tutorial. Each one of these represent a different man in the group. The sword is Mac, who uses his knife a lot more than the others. The wand is Corby, who uses his stick as a wand to cast his spell, so to speak, twice in the movie. And the shield is Fletcher, because he is the one who's the least affected, and most mentally shielded, you might say, to the stress of the danger around them. This effect is doubly shown, as Fletcher is the same rank as Sydney, Private, the lowest rank you can be, but Sydney himself is shown to not be cut out for this, in the same way that Fletcher and Mac are. What of Sydney in this direct comparison of 4 men between 3 objects? Well, Sydney the innocent one represents Sora himself in the middle of these 3 choices before he's even truly stepped foot on his island. Sydney and Sora have a lot in common throughout this part. They both seem to be taking the first steps into discovering who they really are in their own lives. But Sydney's alchemical transformation leads to insanity, Sora's leads to the Keyblade, a kind of different beast. Oh, that reminds me, when Crawler interrupted me, I was just about to tell you something cool.